Hello, good morning. It is Wednesday, the 31st of July, and you're watching Ireland AM on Virgin Media 1.
We're going to be here until 10 this morning, and we have a packed show coming your way.
And you know what we'll have to talk about? Because I was thinking we should have kept the seismometer from Taylor Swift in the country, because everyone was going mad when the Wiffen won last night, don't you think?
Amazing.
Daniel Wiffen, the golden boy from County Armagh, he made history last night when he became the first Irish fella to get a gold medal at the Olympics. He won an Olympic gold in the 800-metre freestyle. We're going to hear all about his record-breaking race from the people who were there and what he meant when he was doing this as he walked out.
Yeah, well, was he signing autographs?
No, that was him writing his way into the history books. That's his explanation as to what he was doing.
Right.
The whiff. Fair play to him.
Also on the programme today, new figures suggest 40% of people under 35 are using phones while they drive. We're going to discuss road safety. 7:35.
So there's people over 35 doing it as well. We can't put the blame all on them. And also a study has found how much people are spending per child on school uniforms in secondary school. What do you think?
Oh, no books, no, just the uniform.
Just the uniforms. What is it?
100 quid.
100, come on.
Yeah, 20, yeah, about 100 quid.
€211 is how much parents are spending per child on school uniforms. Not into it.
No, Philip Larkin was right. Don't have any.
Don't have any school uniforms. So what?
Don't have any kids.
How much? Oh yeah.
Get out early as you can. Don't
there
have
you
any
go.
kids yourself.
I can't remember my
Bit
Leaving
of
Cert
poetry.
poetry. 0896 111. How much are you spending on the school uniforms? I obviously shouldn't have spent any because I can't remember that poem.
Alan, what else is coming up?
Well, Kieran, we're going to give you some simple tips and tricks how to make the perfect beef burger here in the kitchen. And later we're styling a Brat Summer on the catwalk. Yes, I learned what Brat Girl Summer means last week on the show. A Brat Girl Summer.
You're such a brat.
I'm having such a Brat Girl Summer.
Obviously, yeah.
Well, guess who else is having a Brat Girl Summer?
Who?
Up in Donegal. It's Eric. Good morning to you, Eric. How are you getting on?
Good morning, guys. I'm absolutely flattered. I haven't stopped here since 4 o'clock this morning. There's a lot of work to be done up here in Ballyliffin. We're in the greatest county in Ireland, coming to you live from Donegal, and we've a jam-packed, I'd say, a variety of entertainment today. We've got weaving, we've got baking. I'm going to be sheep shearing with Noel Cunningham later on. I think I saw a couple of sheep over there. They look quite nervous to see me. I don't know how it's going to go down. We're also going to be talking to the man himself, Mr. Daniel O'Donnell, which I am very excited about. My mother's very excited about it. I was on the phone to her last night telling her all about it. We're buzzing up here in Donegal. We're also celebrating the rollout of the full fibre broadband here in Clonmany, the surrounding areas in Donegal. Everyone's enjoying the super lightning fast broadband of up to 2 gig. If you're in Clonmany today, make sure you come down and see us. But for now, I have a lot to do. So we're going to see you later on, guys, okay? Check back in with us in a bit.
We were all nervous. We were nervous.
Can he do it? Can he do it?
He's
well
nervous.
done. Well done,
Have
Eric.
they turned the camera off yet? Have they turned the camera off yet?
Go away. His fine head of hair will be sheared himself later on. Looking forward to chatting to Eric in just a little.
Now, after the break, we will be discussing all things railways, a €1 billion plan to extend DART services, and an utterly fictional plan in the All-Ireland Strategic Rail Review.
Good morning. 0896 111. You can get in contact if you've got any hope about the rail plan at all. And of course, we will be talking about the whiff. Be back with you shortly on Ireland AM. No rail for anyone. No Thomas. Welcome back. It's time now to take a look at this morning's papers. We're starting with the Irish Independent, the headline there. Engine trouble suspected as 2 killed in helicopter crash. Both victims were in their 40s, with one man an Irish national and the other thought to be from Eastern Europe. They were the only people on board the aircraft when it crashed into a piggery outside the village of Killucan.
The Daily Mail goes with a similar headline: engine went quiet and then a bang. Shocked witnesses have told how a helicopter was seen struggling over a GAA pitch before its engine cut out, crashing nearby and killing the 2 men inside.
The Examiner, the Herald and the Mirror all lead with the same story.
As do the Sun and the Star today.
Now we'll move on to a different story on the front of the Irish Times. It leads with Golden Boy. Wiffen carves his name into Olympic history. Daniel Wiffen has carved his name into the annals of Irish sporting history by winning the Olympic swimming gold medal in the 800 metres freestyle last night. He produced a brave, magnificently timed chase of glory over 16 lengths, says the Times today.
And we're going to talk about that epic win now. It has been a big week for Ireland, even bigger week for Armagh. I mean, not happy with Sam. They've now taken the gold medal to the Orchard County as well. We had Mona McSharry the evening before. So huge success in the pool, huge celebrations as well after Daniel Wiffen claimed gold. Wrote his name into Olympic history, as you say. So joining us live from Paris, the 42.ie's Gavin Cooney, along with John Rudd, Performance Director with Team Ireland. Gentlemen, thanks a million for chatting to us. Gavin, what was the atmosphere like in the La Défense Arena? It looked incredible.
It was magnificent. What a thing to witness. You know, Daniel Wiffen said that he was holding his Olympic record for the final, and he went and delivered it, and it earned him his gold medal. I mean, what a race it was. Obviously, the Australian Winnington went out very hard and led for the first 400 metres, but Daniel then took the lead, and you thought, well, at least I thought in my ignorance, that, okay, maybe he's going to cruise home from here. But, you know, really brave swim by the Italian Paltrinieri, to the point where he took the leads. I mean, Daniel was, just over quarters of a second behind with 100 metres to go. What a finish. You know, Paltrinieri died, and it was Bobby Fink, the American, who ultimately was the greatest threat. But massive sprint finish from Daniel Wiffen, all-out effort. Yeah. Secured him as gold. Amazing. And
it was so amazing afterwards that he was indeed talking about, he was like, oh, it's not the time I wanted, but he got his gold medal. He had such high expectations of himself. John, you work with Team Ireland. You must have been jumping out of your socks when he came home to win the gold last night.
Oh, absolutely. It's one thing to win your first medal the day before, which was superb, but then to win a gold medal the following day, it's been a roller coaster 48 hours for Irish swimming and for Team Ireland, and we're absolutely thrilled.
What could this mean for swimming in Ireland, John? You know what I mean? There's an expectation, I guess, after medals like this, that there's going to be queues around the block outside swimming pools up and down the country.
Well, let's hope it does do exactly that thing. You know, we've got this unique quality in our sport that it's a life skill rather than a sport. You know, it's something that every kid needs to learn. So if that means that we get more young people attending their local swimming pool and trying to emulate Mona or Daniel or anyone else that's on this team, then happy days. We'll be delighted if that happens.
It's just a wonderful thing. We're looking at some of the pictures here from the papers because, again, just to remind people, we can't take any official footage from the Olympics. That's just a blanket ban. So we've got, again, lovely Gavin and John are painting the pictures for us. But, Gavin, there's something about Daniel Wiffen, and it's amazing to see. And we're seeing it more with our athletes on the pitch, especially after the Europeans. This self-belief and confidence, that's just a breath of fresh air. Mona walked out with a big smile on her face the night before, and last night he was writing his name into the history books as he strolled out to start the race.
Yeah, it's fantastic, isn't it? It's a real, as a kind of more traditional, unsportsmanlike Irishman, I'm not sure I'm very confident with this brash confidence, but of others. But look, I mean, he completely backs it up, you know. But he was speaking to him afterwards. He did admit that he was nervous. He said he woke up yesterday morning with a tiny little percentage of him wondering, can I do this? And I believe he had a session with John that went pretty well during the afternoon, which framed him in a pretty good mindset, after which he went for it. And he said the nerves affected him in the pool for the first 300 metres. He said his stroke was absolutely terrible. Now, I didn't notice that myself, but he steadied himself and got it done. And this is, you know, he's not going to stop anytime soon, Mirren. He said afterwards, he's only 23. Peak age in his sport is only around 27. And the Italian who gave us such a good fight last night is only 29. And obviously we have another race, the 1,500 metres later on. And I think that's that might be his preferred discipline. The longer opponents have to go against Daniel Wiffen, the worse it seems to be for them. I guess it's like staring directly into the sun.
John, tell us about that session then you had with him yesterday. What was he talking about? What nerves had he, and how did you deal with them?
Well, there's some training venues available here that are away from the racing venue. So if the athletes don't have anything really specific to do in terms of preparation, you know, pace work or practicing elements of their race, it's a good idea to scoop them up and get them away from the lights and the cameras. So we borrowed a car off the Olympic Federation and we drove across Paris and found one of these pools and just dropped him in there nice and quiet. And he had a little paddle. And I think it just gave him the opportunity to clear his mind and to get things straight as to what was coming in a few hours' time. Less people hassling him and asking him for selfies and autographs and that kind of thing. And just that moment, 45 minutes in the pool, just a bit of composure and to get his head clear. And I think that made a huge difference for him, that he was just chatting away about anything and everything. Daniel doesn't stop talking. He's a terrific guy to have around. And, we were chatting about everything apart from swimming all the way there and similar on the way back. And I think it put him in a really good headspace.
I love the way you just took Daniel Wiffen for a little paddle before
I
he won gold.
I suspect his paddle is different, from my paddle and your paddle.
Paddle in Ross Bay Beach. Well, let's talk about that, because, John, you realised that he needed something yesterday. You went off, you had the session, you took him away from all the madness. How is everything inside camp? How are people feeling? How are people interacting? How's it going? And how's the pressure?
This is a really relaxed Olympics. It's got its challenges. There's a few logistics that you have to sort of deal with on a daily basis, but that's Olympic life. That's being in a village. Team Ireland have really set this up well. We've got terrific accommodation block. We're really close to all of the amenities and makes life very easy. There's a great buzz amongst athletes from across all the sports. You go up to the top floor of our block and there's a big TV there, and there's people from different sports just sat down, for instance, yesterday watching the rugby and chatting away. And it's not often you get a chance to do that between sports. So there's a collegiate feel with this team across the 13 different sports here. And that brings a richness and I suppose a calmness as well to what everybody's doing, because everybody celebrates their highs and pats those guys on the back that maybe haven't got quite what they want the day before or on that day. And that's super helpful. So it's a really good feel here, and hats off to the Olympic Federation for setting this up so well.
It strikes me as well, from a team point of view, John, like getting these medals early, it's such a shot in the arm for other potential medalists. It's easy for us and for people speculating to be kind of doing the tallies and talking about anywhere between kind of 6 and 10 or even more medals. It's something else for that to become real. And for other athletes, then be they boxers or rowers or anyone, they look at the swimming pool and they say, actually, you know what, it can pan out exactly the way we've planned it.
Yeah, I mean, it's your responsibility, I suppose in week 1 to inspire those that are coming in week 2. So, we're delighted to contribute to that. And, we've got Daniel to come again in the 1500. He's got a really good chance of being in the top 3 again. We've got some great relays going at the end of the week. We've still got Ellen Walsh to come and Tom Fannin to come, and Mona McSharry doing her 200 breaststroke today. So the job isn't finished at all yet. This is great. And Irish swimming sits 6th on the medal table when it comes to the swimming at this moment in time, and there's some big names in swimming that are behind us or not even on the medal table yet. So we're going to use that as a fuel. Yeah. We're in a really good place, only halfway through the meet, and we'll keep pinning away at this.
It's just so wonderful. Like, as you said, we've got more to come. Mona McSharry, that big smile on her face. Eileen Watt, it's so good. Mona, a little bit later on today. Obviously, we're going to be staying in the pool a little bit later for Mona. What else is going on, Gav, that we need to be looking out for with hopes later on?
Kelly Harrington this afternoon boxes her quarter-final. If she wins that, she'll be guaranteed a medal. As we say, at least a bronze medal, and then she'll fight a semi-final to see what colour it can be transformed into. Nat Nguyen in the badminton, I don't exactly know what time it's from, 8:20 this morning, but he's playing the Olympic champion, and if he can upset him, he'll obviously qualify for the quarter-finals and have a great chance of medaling himself. And then there's rowing semi-finals today, including Paul O'Donovan and Fintan McCarthy. They win that, they'll be in their finals on Friday. I mean, John's team is going to play a massive role in it, but we may be on, the 3rd day of the biggest week in Irish Olympic history. There's 2 medals in the bag. There may be more to come, and there may be more to come in the pool as well. So it's quite a thing to be living through.
Gavin, you're getting a bit of that Mona McSharry and Daniel Wiffen self-belief there. Come on, calm down. You know, you need to.
I know.
I don't know if it sits well with you. Listen,
They're really rubbing off on me. Yeah, I need to go back to talking to GA players.
Well, you can catch Gavin and Sinead O'Carroll, of course. They've got their Olympics Daily podcast. It's out every single evening. And John, it's just been such a pleasure. We'll hopefully talking to you again soon about more medals, more performances, and huge congratulations to everyone inside in Team Ireland. Thanks a million for chatting to us today.
Thank you both.
We haven't even started to claim the other athletes. The Molly O'Callaghan's from Australia. Siobhan Bernadette Haughey, we're taking her from Hong Kong.
The Haughey's
by
are
way
back,
of Kinseely.
The Haughey's are back, it's so good. Murphy as well. Anyway, sure, look, we'll be chatting more about them later on, and we're hoping to be speaking to Daniel Wiffen's twin, Nathan, in just a little while. But still to come, we'll be taking a look at the other stories making today's headlines.
That includes the cost of getting your kids back to school and a €1 billion plan to extend the dart. Back in a few minutes.
Taoiseach Simon Harris has said we are now at a critical juncture when it comes to road deaths after 5 people lost their lives on the roads just last weekend.
The fatalities included motorcyclists and a 14-year-old boy on an e-scooter. Joining us to discuss this crisis is Leo Legio, Vice President of the Irish Road Victims Association, and Dominic Brophy, Director of the Professional Driving Instructors Association. And thank you both so much for being here this morning. Leo, you have been involved in road safety since 2005 when matters visited your door in the most horrific way.
Yeah, my daughter Marcia was killed in it. She just turned 16 and was killed in a hit and run. On the 16th of October, she was knocked down and she survived till the 22nd. She fought for her life in Tallinn, Bowman hospitals.
Was she crossing the road?
She was returning from a 50th birthday party, and she was crossing the road, a set of traffic lights, and she was about 2 foot, 3 yard away from the footpath, and she was ploughed out of it. The height of the traffic lights, clean out of her runners.
That was 19 years ago.
19 years ago.
And then, so when we're hearing these statistics now, this is something that hits home to you then so personally. And as Vice President of the Irish Road Victims Association, what kind of help then, and how do you reach out to these people, and what can you offer them?
Well, Donna Price set up IRVA after her son Darren was killed in a collision, and she's seen that what these people are going through now is the quagmire of the legal system, having to deal with coroner reports, inquests, and all that there. And it was just, it's something you don't want to go through.
No, you've just lost somebody. Yeah, you don't need all that legal stuff. You just want to grieve. Yeah.
And so we have done we've produced this leaflet that anybody can get. It's a booklet anybody can get from the Gardaí if they've been affected. Yeah. And we have a helpline. It's open 24 hours a day.
But Leo, how do you personally feel? We were doing so well for so long with numbers of road deaths. Not that anyone is ever acceptable, of course, but they were coming down. Yeah. And then in the last few years, they started to go up. We're at 113 already this year. That's 16 up on last year. Yeah. You've been working in this for 19 years since this tragedy visited your family. How are you feeling about this now?
It's heartbreaking, and you feel that you're 1 step forward and 2 steps back. And we were doing so well, and it was great. The numbers are coming down, and we felt like you were making an impact. And then when you hear this happen, we're looking at over 200 by the time Christmas comes, by the end of the year, and it's these are all preventable. Yeah. These are preventable deaths, and then think about there's 10 times the number that have been seriously injured, life-threatening injuries. And people forget about those as well.
Yeah, and that's affecting families as well, all across the country.
I don't like talking in numbers, but these are every third Sunday in November, we in the Bloomfield Hotel, we have our day of remembrance there. And we have tables with photographs of people that have passed. Yeah. People give up their photographs. And the number of young children there, and elderly people, middle-aged, young people, the whole lives ahead of them. And every year I go there and I just look at the photographs, and you look into their eyes, it breaks your heart.
Yeah. And the opening, when we just as we introduced you there, we said Simon Harris coming out, making statements like that. Words are not enough for this
No,
type of thing.
it's time. The talking has to stop now. They have to start taking action, and they're not doing it. They're just wallpapering over the cracks.
Well, Dominic, let's talk about this because we have, I think in 15 years, more than 500,000 extra cars on the road. We've got less guards policing those roads, so those numbers in the traffic corps have come down. And when Simon Harris said to slow down, put the phone away, never take drink or drugs before getting into the car. These are all things that we think are obvious, but it's not. What's going on in the state of play? What do you think is going on with people learning how to drive? Is it good enough, our standards?
Well, no, our standards aren't good enough. We feel as if there has to be a root and branch review of how we teach our young people how to drive. If we compare it to international standards, we're very low. And at the present system at the moment is you pass your theory test, and then you move to the practical side of driving, which is 12 EDT lessons, which is essential driver training. They're obligatory, but it's recommended by the Department of Transport and the RSA that in between each EDT hour, you drive for 3 hours with your sponsor. Now, your sponsor can be a driving instructor or it can be a family member. So your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister. So that would come to 36 hours, 12 hours with the professional and 36 hours with the sponsor. So 75% of your learning to drive experience is with a novice driving instructor. So I'm able to speak, but I can't come in and do your job today.
Can I just ask you there, how can you even prove you've done that?
They're not logged, those sponsors.
So those, you could sort of say, oh yeah, I've been out doing that with my dad who has passed his driving test, been driving for years, and I've been out with him every day for 3 hours, but you can't prove it.
There's no proof. You know, you have to take the word of your customer.
Yeah.
You know, they're young people, and you say, well, have you got your practice in? And they'll say yes. Or they'll say no, but you'll know in the first 10 minutes whether they have or not.
What should we be doing then?
Well, what we propose is that we should flip that around from 75% with the novice driving instructor, the family member, and flip it around so 75% is with the professional.
But we don't have enough driving instructors as it is. We do. Well, then why are people waiting for months to get their tests, and you just keep getting learner permits? Just keep being given again.
Yes, well, there's 30,000 people are driving on their learner's permit at the minute.
Yeah, that's not because they can't get driving lessons. That's because they can't get driving tests.
But even that's what I'm saying. But even the tests, like with this backlog, we've enough drivers to flip that from that.
Yes.
Do we?
Yes, we would, yeah. And it's an open market, you know. It's supply and demand, I suppose. And if the demand is out there, you know...
But then, sorry, just to disturb you, is that a cost then on this person trying to learn then?
Oh, yeah, of course it's a cost. But what's the cost of a life? We hear Leo's tragic story and the members of his association. And what is the cost? You know, for those 12 EDT hours, you know, you're talking about between 500 and 600 euro. But if you compare that to international standards, in the Netherlands, for example, it's over 2,000 euro.
Is it?
In Germany, it's 1,800 euro.
Wow.
In the UK, it's 1,600 euro. You know, we're at the very lowest level. And we really need to take it seriously how we teach our people how to drive and in what manner we teach our people.
We'd love to hear from you in relation to that, because these lessons were only brought in not that long ago. You didn't even have to get professional lessons at all. 0896 111 111, and people are going to look at the expense. And the 40% of drivers, and this is looking at under 35s, and we know that this happens that over 35s do this as well, but they admit to checking online apps whilst driving. I would expect that it's actually an awful lot higher than that. Leo, working with families and victims and looking at what's going on, and you look at the stats and you do so much, and you say you don't like to finger point things, but what do you see as the issues of what's going on our roads?
Well, the four main killers are speed, use mobile phone use, not wearing seat belts, and drive with distractions. So
the thing about not wearing seatbelts, that there's an increase in people not wearing seatbelts. That's happening.
Yeah.
And then speed and the mobile phones.
Yeah.
So everything is increasing. We're seeing increased numbers in absolutely everything. And there's talks of bringing in systems to detect mobile phone use. What do you want to see happening? What practically needs to be done?
See, there's a cohort of drivers out there that no matter what you do, they'll just ignore the rules. They just blatantly don't care. So I would like to see a doubling of penalty points.
Right.
immediate ban for anybody caught using their mobile phones.
Immediate ban from driving.
Immediate driving ban.
Take the car off them there and then.
There's no reason whatsoever for using your mobile phone in the car. None. Right. Like, most journeys are only going to take a half an hour, the maximum. Sure, you can put your phone away for a half an hour.
But even at that, it connects to your car. You can look at your navigation system and you can take your call if you have to on the screen. And
the government have to start bringing the technology. The technology is there. The technology is there to reduce speeds in cars from coming into the 50 mile an hour zone, 70 kilometre an hour zone, 120 kilometres.
So speed limiters, you think the use of speed limiters should be enforced?
Yeah, they're being brought in new cars now. There's ISA and intelligent speed assist. Alcohol interlocking devices on cars.
Okay.
The car won't start. If you breathe and you have alcohol in your system, the car won't start.
But do you have to do that voluntary?
It's been an operation now in 7 or 8 countries around Europe, where if a judge can either give you a ban from driving or insist that you put this interlocking device in your car. And that's monitored every month.
Okay.
And drug driving is going up as well. So that's
the detection and that there is going to be is a problem at the moment.
Yeah, that's the issue. There is a detection, roadside detection.
And the other thing is speed as well. Is graduated speeding penalties. Like you're going to be fined penalised the same amount for going 50 kilometres an hour over the speed limit than you are 1 kilometre an hour over the speed limit. Like, it's a no-brainer.
Oh, I see that, yes. So the higher over the speed limit, the increased fine.
Yeah.
Do you think that if someone is found, we'll say drink driving or something like that their car should be taken off them?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That's the thing, because sometimes that doesn't happen. Like, Dominic, we live in a system that does feel for people. It's weird, right? That you're kind of like, you're found drink driving, but here's your car, off you go.
Yeah.
That seems wrong.
Yeah, all the messaging from the government and from the RSA, well, I wouldn't say all the messaging, but some of the messaging is just wrong. You know, yesterday, as a driving instructor, I'm a working driving instructor, and I was in a test centre yesterday with a customer of mine, and I was accompanying him for his test. And whilst we were in the waiting room, we had 2 young men come in to sit their test as well, unaccompanied. And they went and did their driving test, and by their reaction when they came back, they didn't pass. They jumped in their car and they drove away from the test centre. Now, if we're allowing that at RSA test centres, and we're sending out the message to our young people that it's even okay to come up to a test centre unaccompanied and flaunting the 2018 Clancy Amendment.
Yeah.
What message are we sending to our young people in general? Now, I have spoken to politicians and I've sent emails to the RSA questioning this procedure and behaviour, and their reply is always the same, that it's the responsibility of Garda Síochána to police that. Okay. Which is a fair comment, but also if the tester comes out to my car and my tax is out of date, there's no test. So they police that, but which is not dangerous. Of course, the tax should be paid, but it's not dangerous. But if a 17, 18-year-old drives to a test centre, fails their test, and comes out with their head in a spin and jumps in their car, that's dangerous.
We'd love to know what you think this morning. 0896 111 111. Dominic Brophy, Director of the Professional Driving Instructors Association. And also we've got the helpline up there, the Vice President of the Irish Road Victims Association. Leo Legio, thank you so much for joining us both this morning.
Thank you very much for coming in.
Back with you in just a minute.
Now you're welcome back. It is time to look at the most recent news stories hitting the front pages this morning.
Yeah, joining us to discuss are Jack Horgan-Jones, political correspondent with the Irish Times, and Sarah McGuinness, assistant news editor for the Business Post. Good morning to you. Thanks very much for joining us this morning. Can we start with that terrible helicopter crash yesterday? What's the latest on it?
Well, out of a clear blue sky, quite literally, because it was a picture-perfect day yesterday, and about 3:30 p.m. it appears that this helicopter carrying 2 people got into difficulty of some description. Locals seem to be suggesting that it seems to be engine trouble. There are eyewitness accounts from the scene suggesting that there was a loss of power. There seemed to have been a loss of power.
Just went silent.
Followed by a large crash as it hit a piggery in this townland in Westmeath. So 2 fatalities confirmed, both men in their 40s, one Irish man, one man presumed or understood to be from Eastern Europe. and their bodies were removed from the scene last night. Their families being informed. The Eastern European man said to be with the assistance of Interpol. So, look, it's an incredible and shocking tragedy that unfolded very quickly and very dramatically yesterday afternoon in the middle of the country, and as I say, out of a clear blue sky.
Yeah, well, listen, as soon as there's any more detail on who they were or purposes of journey or anything like that, we'll be sure to bring it to you. Sarah, tell us about this other story in the papers today, the All-Ireland Strategic Rail Review. We got it in draft form actually almost exactly 12 months ago. Full report coming today.
New age of rail. It's the brave new world, lads.
I mean, it's quite ambitious. 35 to 37 billion it's going to cost.
It's a work of fiction.
Yeah, if it's all implemented.
Let's all acknowledge that right at the outset.
Yeah.
It'll be passed on to the next government.
Myself and Jack were reading through this outside, and I kind of said, like, if this goes ahead, it's brilliant. But obviously, when you look at a price tag like that and a vision that is set out to 2050, you kind of can't help but feel, how realistic is this? But anyway,
some of the highlights of it are what?
Yeah, so basically it's increasing the rail network and spreading it out across the country. So there's loads of measures that make a lot of comprehensive sense, and basically under it, like 700,000 people are going to have access to the rail line. So it's going to bring trains to the North Midlands and to the northwest of the country, so Mullingar, and then up to kind of Donegal, which is direly needed, as we all know. There's also reviving old routes that weren't there before, so reviving certain corridors, one along Wexford and then one along the Western Rail corridor, so that's Claremorris, Star, Athenry. There's going to be more trains, so that's going to reduce wait time, so they're saying it could reduce them by up to half, and hourly service is in some urban areas, and in rural areas, services should be
Kieran's
2 hours.
like full of this.
You're
Yes,
almost really Kieran. What the hell?
Jack, this is really going to happen, isn't it?
No.
But like some of it has to be implemented.
Well, you put your finger on it there, right? Some version of this
Has to
at
be
some
done.
point in the future, to be determined, at a cost to be determined, is likely to come into being. But is it going to be exactly this plan? Almost certainly not. And if you want a comparison, look at the Dart Plus West line, which is on the front page of our own paper, the Irish Times today. So that was first proposed as part of the government's Transport 21 strategy in 2005. But as we know from years of bitter experience with these things, they're all contingent on circumstance and politics and budgets. And what happened after 2005, I think we all know, the great financial crisis and the recession here. So that was tossed on the bonfire, only to re-emerge in 2021. And finally now we have a planning decision almost 20 years later after it first emerges. So look, yes, it is very, and this is the problem with these projects. It's very easy to sit down and say, right, okay, on a blank sheet of paper, let's draw up a really good rail system. Yeah. The problem is when the rubber meets the road, or when the wheel meets the rail, it's a lot more tricky than that. So some version of it at some point.
Metro North as well. Like Metro North, that's only 10 kilometres.
Yeah. This
is talking about 700 kilometres of extra rail around the country.
And they want to link Dublin, Belfast and Shannon.
Yeah, this would be the airports as well. So put railway lines through the airports, which is something that most of the European cities did some time ago. So anyway. this is the problem. While the process has gotten more vexed and complex and expensive, we're starting later and later and later. Whereas if you'd started 50, 60, 70 years ago,
what always amazes me about these is buses. Electric we have an amazing motorway network. And electric buses are cheaper, much more flexible and much more adaptable. And for some reason, buses are just not as sexy as trains. People love a train. Nobody will celebrate a new bus route.
Very quickly, it's only the start of August. We're talking about going back to school and the cost of going back to school. And this is Bernardo's survey that they do every year. And an awful lot of parents out there worried.
Yeah, this makes for really stark reading. So 3/4 of parents of secondary school children, and then just over half of parents of primary school children are really worried about the cost of going back to school. They're worried about uniforms and various other things. The voluntary contribution is once again kind of thrust in the spotlight on the back of this report. Parents are saying that this fee doesn't feel voluntary at all, and like they kind of have to pay it. And I don't have kids, so I don't know how much they are. But I think I remember like my voluntary contribution fee being something like €120. You know, it's a very hefty additional cost all to come at the start of the year. Only 30% of secondary school parents feel that the costs are manageable. And what's actually really stark is increasingly parents are kind of worried that they're going to have to get into debt essentially to afford the cost of their parents going back to school. So that figure was 21% of secondary school parents and 12.5, I think, or 12% primary school parents.
And like, it is a worry for people, and they look as they want to sort of say all schools, like free school books for everyone now to extend it, and that school should adopt an affordable uniform.
Yeah, I think that's the most egregious thing, isn't it? 81% of parents say their children's school don't offer an affordable uniform.
Yeah.
Every uniform should be able to be bought in pennies.
And these things, they're not overly complex as well. So the school that my oldest daughter is in, they have a good thing where they basically act as a marketplace where they allow people to bring in old uniforms and sell them for $5 to each other, you know. So that's just one thing that schools can be doing to kind of try and help parents circumvent those huge costs of buying uniforms up front, because often kids just grow out of them. They're not in bad nick. You know?
We'd love to hear from you on this. Let us know, but we need to take a quick break. We'll see you back here very shortly. Thank you so much this morning.
It's time now to take a look at this morning's paper, starting with the Irish Independent. The headline there, engine trouble suspected as 2 killed in helicopter crash. Both victims were in their 40s, with one of them an Irish national and the other thought to be from Eastern Europe. They were the only people on board the aircraft when it crashed into a piggery outside the village of Killucan.
The Daily Mail goes with a similar headline: engine went quiet and then a bang. Shocked witnesses have told how a helicopter was seen struggling over a GAA pitch before its engine cut out, crashing nearby and killing the 2 men inside.
The Examiner, the Herald and the Mirror all leave with the same story.
And the Sun, the Star also running this story on their front pages.
The Irish Times goes with something else, and they say golden boy Wiffen carves his name into Olympic history. Daniel Wiffen has carved his name into the annals of Irish sporting history by winning the Olympic swimming gold medal in the 800 metres men's freestyle last night. He produced a brave, magnificently timed chase, they say, of glory over 16 lengths, and it was an absolute wonder to watch, just like Mona McSherry the night before. Fantastic.
Incredible.
It was so good.
So good.
So good, so good. Now, we were talking...
still another one to come.
Oh, yeah. And Mona.
And Mona,
Mona. We were talking earlier on about road safety.
Yes.
And what's going on with numbers, because it's been a huge increase in the amount of numbers at the moment, and lots of texts coming.
Lots of texts coming in, and we were talking about lessons and different ways that we could approach to try and make it safer. And Sandra says the cost of driving lessons is huge. Where are the young people supposed to get the money? Could there be a scheme to give some of the money from the government, maybe? A government scheme to help you with your driving lessons? I don't know. Would it work? It would, probably.
Yeah. I suppose when you're kind of thinking there's so many things that the government have to do, and you're kind of going, well, is a car a luxury or is it a necessity? And for a lot of people, it's a necessity.
This is on the back of what we were saying earlier on, that you're supposed to do, when you have your permit, you're supposed to be with a licensed driver for 3 hours a day learning, but you can go in then to your tester and go, I did all that. No proof of I was ever in a car with anyone. Yeah, I did my 3 hours. So they were saying maybe that should be compulsory to do with a proper driving instructor, but then we have the cost. So maybe if that cost, if that was helped pay for, maybe that would be different.
Geraldine says with regards to learner drivers, it should be obligatory to have some lessons at night. Nighttime driving is completely different to daytime driving. You're dead right.
Phyllis says if the speed limit in Ireland is a maximum of 120, how are cars able to go faster? That's where the problem is.
Yeah, I suppose cars are made for various jurisdictions, not just for Ireland. So, you know, you've got autobahn driving. Now, I know you can put a limiter on.
Very easy.
Absolutely. I know that there is limiters in cars. And
I always think of the logic is, imagine cars had always been made with that limiter and somebody came in here and they said, you know what, I think we should remove speed limiters in cars, allow them to go 200 kilometres an hour and just ask people not to do it. But you'd say, sorry, were you dropped on your head?
Yeah,
but
exactly.
We can also turn off phones. Like literally, your phone could work for calling. They have the technology to go, but you can't text, you can't do anything. They could do that. 0896 111 111. We'd love to hear from you. You're also talking
about school uniforms, and this comes up every year around this time, because I know it's only start of August, but people are already thinking about buying the uniforms and getting their children back to school and the cost. And it was a Bernardo survey that so many people are like scared and just worried about the cost of going back to school. And Claire says, my daughter is starting first year. Her uniform is going to cost €260. The school jacket was 70. You're not allowed to wear any other jacket. PE gear was 80, etc. It all adds up, and this was still haven't bought the shoes.
It's cheaper than not having a uniform, right? And I know that if you get a school, if you got a school jacket, if you had a blazer in school, you got one in first year that lasted you all the way until sixth year.
You'd have been swimming in it in first year.
Listen, you get someone who knows how to sew and make it into something else. You do a Marge Simpson with the Chanel suit, and
Be
you
like
just keep
those
on
lads going to the Debs and their dad's tux.
Yeah, it's grand. You're in first. It's fine. My school start lasted from first year all the way to sixth year.
Should be allowed to
today. This is it.
This is my school uniform.
A generic
we were
uniform.
nuns in Limerick, thank you, right down to there.
We say this every year: generic uniform, and just sew the crest onto it, the school crest.
089611111.
Let us
Love
know.
to hear from you.
Now, after the break, we're exploring a topic which could improve both your health and your finances.
We're getting sober curious and asking, should we be cutting down on alcohol?
Back in a few. Now, sober curiosity is growing in popularity at the moment, with sales of non-alcoholic beers in Ireland more than tripling since 2017. That, according to Drinks Ireland.
Amazing. Joining us to discuss their experience with sobriety is content creator Sam Kelly and founder of Sober Social Ireland, Melissa Kelly. Thank you so much both for being here. We really appreciate it. If anyone wants to get in contact with us about this, by the way, we'd love to hear from you. 0896 111 111. Sam, we're going to start with you. So you're 26.
Yeah.
Why did you give up alcohol?
I feel like after COVID, I was just dying to get out, go out in the town, and kind of 2 years on the line then, it was kind of going too far. It was never just, I'll have one drink. It was always just a rake of drinks, and you'd wake up with the fear. And just after 2 years, I kind of just had to nip it in the bud, you know? So I signed up to 1 year no beer. And after that, it was just plain sailing from there, sober since then.
So how long has that been now?
Over a year now, so last April.
Last April.
How long into 1 year no beer did you think, actually, I might make this longer than a year? Like at the start, was it genuinely, listen, in 12 months' time, I'm just going back on it?
Yeah, I think for the longest time, I had tried to just do a month, you know, so even kind of a week even. But I think after the 1 year no beer, like a month in, I was kind of like, okay, I think this might be longer than a year. Do you know what I mean? And it kind of, when you get used to the whole lifestyle change, like that first month is like the toughest thing ever.
Yeah.
But after that, it becomes the norm. And yeah, I was just enjoying it too much, enjoying being sober too much to go back for now anyway.
That's amazing. And for you, Melissa, what was it?
Yeah, Sam and I were actually just talking there before we came on. We have very similar stories. It was really, you know, the weekend drinking, blacking out, and having a hangover that was starting to last 4 days, and especially the anxiety. And I realized I had started drinking when I was, 16, 17. I quit drinking when I was 26 years old, so that was 4 years ago. And I had been drinking basically every weekend since I was 16, 17. It was basically all we'd got together to do on the weekends. And it was really starting to affect my mental health. And I kind of grappled with that question of, am I an alcoholic? When is it a problem? And I guess the answer is it's a problem when you decide it's a problem. And so I started trying to take a 30-day break over and over again, failed miserably over and over again. People asking, oh, you want to come out for, a beer, or, me having a really tough week at work and having a few glasses of wine on the weekend and saying, sure, whatever, I'll just, have a drink. And it eventually, it took the pandemic actually for me to quit. 6 weeks into the pandemic is when I stopped drinking.
And can I ask, when you were doing those 30-day challenges, and you say friends maybe were asking you for a beer, were you kind of doing it secretly?
Oh, 100% secretly.
Okay.
I was lurking on all of the sobriety blogs, and I didn't get to 30 days until I actually quit. I would get 2 weeks here, 3 weeks there. And it was so confidence destroying to set those promises for yourself and break them, that it really started to knock my confidence and my self-esteem, and that was, wrapped up in the issue as well.
Because I think for an awful lot of people, like last night, I was out, it was gorgeous. It was like, oh, sure, I'll have a glass of wine. Because it's like we're going to get sunshine 4 times. But it's the same with everything, Sam, isn't it? There's always a friend's birthday. There's always, oh, sure, there's a party on.
Christmas, whatever it is, there's always an
So there's always
event.
an excuse.
Yeah, exactly. There's never like a good time to stop, do you know what I mean?
So navigating it is a decision.
Yeah, I always say, if you want to do it, you just have to do it now, no matter what's going on around you, and the decision has to come from within as opposed to what else is going on.
But did you have to, like, when we're talking about alcoholism and, you know, deciding to go sober, they can be two very vastly different things. But did you have to decide, right, I can't really engage with kind of my mates on nights out if they're all getting drunk for a while, just to kind of ease myself off?
Yeah.
Or were you like, no, I'm gonna just rip the plaster?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think for the first month, I didn't really go out a whole lot because I don't think I have a lot of willpower as well. So I was like, if I go into a pub, I might just have a cheeky one, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I kind of stayed away from it for the first month. And then after that, I kind of, you know, I felt a little stronger to go out. So I'd go to the pub maybe once a week or, you know, every 2 weeks or whatever. And I was able to kind of, you know, stay off it because of that, I think, that first month.
And when did you reveal then to your pals that you were doing this, and what was the reaction?
I kind of said it out straight. I wanted everyone to know that that's what the decision was, and, you know, just kind of outright the day I decided to go sober. And I think the reason was because I didn't want anyone being confused. You know, I didn't want anyone to think any differently. And it was met with some support, and it was met with kind of unsupport as well. But, you know, at the end of the day, I just wanted people to know that that's what the decision was.
And what's the thing about people being unsupportive? Like, what, just kind of like, go on?
Yeah, I think my family and my friends were definitely the most supportive of it because they actually saw how bad it got. But the people that I only ever saw out when I was, you know, drinking and stuff like that, that's the only environment they'd ever seen me in before.
Yeah.
So I think for them it was like a little alien, and they were like, nah, go on, have a drink. If I buy you one, you'll have one. That sort of thing.
So it's a money thing. I'll get it for you. have to have it. It's free.
Yeah.
And Melissa, how soon into it did you realise you had to kind of come up with something else to, not so much fill the time, but fill that kind of social outlet that kind of going out and drinking provided?
I would say that you do have to learn how to fill your time as well. Drinking indirectly took up a lot of time. Like, the amount of time that I spent drinking was maybe a few hours on the weekend, but then for the rest of the weekend, all of Saturday, hungover, all of Sunday, you're scrambling to get everything done that you didn't do on Saturday and maybe see your friends. And then, you know, I was constantly overthinking about drinking, trying to say, okay, well, next weekend I won't drink.
Never again.
Never again, you wake up, the age-old story.
There's the look of someone who says never again regularly.
We've had chats about this. So you started a group after the so you decided to do this during the pandemic, right? So you're kind of locked away. Fair play to you. So tell me about Sober Social Ireland.
So I should say I quit drinking in 2020 when I was up in Belfast doing my PhD. And so I was living up there at the time. And I started posting on social media secretly at first, and then I told people about it in my real life, about my journey, because the Instagram sober community was such a supportive place for me, hearing other people's stories and the authenticity and the vulnerability of it and being honest. And I started sharing openly. And a few people started reaching out to me saying, hey, I live in Belfast as well. Would you like to go get a coffee? I'm sober too. I've been off the drink for 2 months or whatever it was. And so slowly we started to form a little group up in Belfast where every month or so it was the pandemic, so we'd go for a walk with a coffee or something like that. And then in 2022, I was about 2 years sober when we had the opportunity to move down to Waterford, where I live now with my partner. And so I kind of lost that community a little bit. And so I was working from home. I don't drink. So I found it really difficult to meet people. I also live out in the country. So. And so I started an Instagram page, and I just started hosting virtual calls at first because everyone was spread out all over the place, and we would kind of meet on Zoom. And then eventually I started hosting in-person meetups. Our first one was an afternoon tea in Dublin. I came up and I met the girls, and it was really fun. And then it kind of just took off from there. People just kept joining it, and it became more of a regular thing, started talking about it more. And I have the Instagram as well, where everyone is super supportive, and I have an online Substack as well, where I write about my journey as well.
Yeah, that's our events.
Sam, what is the biggest difference in your life?
Yeah.
Ooh, the biggest difference.
You're loaded.
Oh, Jesus.
I wish. It's a solid gold chain. Yeah. It's got about 10 more under the t-shirt.
I wish, The biggest difference, I think, just waking up on a Sunday and having the full day. Like, I always say, I have a 7-day week now. Like, beforehand, I would have had a 6-day week. But, the biggest difference is just having more time to do what you want on a Sunday. And like we were saying there, just filling your time with other things, going on hikes, going on runs, meeting other friends, that sort of thing. Huge difference.
That anxiety is gone.
The fear no more.
Look at those smug faces. No anxiety. Fair play to you. That must be, what a way to live. I love it.
Yeah.
People can find out more about Sober Social Ireland, of course, online. Melissa Kelly and Sam Kelly, who makes content online as well. Where can people find you?
Sam Kelly 98 on TikTok and Instagram.
Sam, thank you so much.
Thank you
Melissa,
very much.
thanks a
Thanks
million.
very
Really
much.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Get in
loads still
contact
to come.
0896 111 111 just to let us know if you've joined that journey. We'd love to hear from you.
Loads still to come here on Ireland AM. First, though, today's headlines in the Virgin Media Newsroom.
Thanks, Kieran. Daniel Wiffen has won Ireland's first gold medal of the Paris Olympics after winning the 800-metre freestyle final last night. A day after Mona McSharry won bronze in the pool, Wiffen set a new Olympic record as he won in 7 minutes 38.19 seconds. It's only Ireland's 12th ever Olympic gold medal. In other news, Hamas says its leader Ismail Haniyeh has been assassinated in Iran overnight. In a statement, the militant group said Mr. Haniyeh was killed in an Israeli airstrike on his residence in Tehran after he took part in the inauguration of Iran's new president. Investigations are continuing this morning into a single-engine helicopter crash that claimed the lives of 2 men in their 40s. The incident happened near Killucan, near Mullingar, at around 3:30 yesterday afternoon. The scene was preserved overnight and post-mortems are due to take place at Regional Hospital Mullingar. Time now for a look at the weather forecast.
You need to be chilled to handle Irish weather. That's why Chill sponsor weather updates in Virgin Media One.
Any fog in the southwest will clear early this morning, leaving a widely sunny start to the day, although western parts will see patchy cloud. Cloud cover will continue to increase through the afternoon and will become overcast. However, it will remain largely dry with sunny spells in some areas. Highest temperatures of 18 to 23 degrees. And tonight should be widely cloudy but dry for much of the night. A few clear spells may develop towards the end of the night across the far south. Minimum temperatures of 15 to 16 degrees.
You need to be chilled to handle Irish weather. That's why Chill sponsor weather updates in Virgin Media One.
Thanks for staying with us now. Eric is in Donegal this morning ahead of the Clonmany Agricultural Show next week.
And he's going to be putting his sheep shearing skills to the test.
How are you getting on, Eric?
We're absolutely fantastic. I'm here with the very famous Noel Cunningham. Noel, tell me all about the agricultural show up here.
I have been waiting for so long in Ireland AM to say good morning Ireland from Donegal, from Clonmany. Isn't it just exciting to be here?
Very exciting. I mean, it's been a jam-packed morning so far, to say the least. I can only imagine what next week's going to be like.
It's beyond words. It's very hard to describe to people who live in cities or big towns how important a gathering like this is in the country. We're all people of the country. We're from agricultural backgrounds, and here you have every shade of a sort of agricultural society gathered to show off their wares, to be part of this great community event, and everything happens, and it's for all the family, mum, dad, granddad, children. It's just amazing.
And you've been no stranger, obviously, to the agriculture show over the last number of years. What have been some of the standout moments for you in the last few years?
The standout moments are, for me particularly, I come in here and I'm being told night, noon and morning that children want to just stay in the rooms in front of tablets. I come here and I see that children are absolutely intrigued by the animals, by the crafts, by the sheep shearing, by the tractors, the machinery. Everything about the show grabs their attention, and it just gives the lie that young children can't be stimulated by matters outdoors and that. So that for me is a very big part.
I had some of the children here teaching me how to drive the tractors earlier on, which is great.
And you did a very poor job.
Well, I did.
Kids were better.
I had
a
very good teacher. I had a very good teacher. Obviously, you have been awarded Mr. Donegal Person of the Year. And first of all, I want to ask why I've never received that award. How do I go about getting one? But it must be very, very special to have received such an award.
Well, I wouldn't say it because Daniel O'Donnell's here and he's a lot younger than me. You're far too young to be even considered. Yeah,
maybe someday.
You have an awful lot of mileage yet to go through. Look, to be recognised and to be honoured in your own county with Donegal Person of the Year or any county in the country, it's lovely. Why? Because you're getting it from the people in your county who consider that you've made some contribution, and at the end of the day, our role is to leave something behind, to do something that helps people, you know, and that's why I get involved with Clonmany Show. I mean, that Jared Noon fella wouldn't be paying me a big salary or anything. You know, I rue the day I met him, you know. A phone call from Jared in here several years later. You're
still here.
Absolutely, and loving it. No, it's just a great honour to be a Donegal Person of the Year.
And speaking of awards, we have one here behind us. I'll grab it.
Ah, yes.
The Noel Cunningham Perpetual Cup. Tell us a bit about this.
Well, they very kindly did this beautiful silver cup here in honour of me, which was generous and kind beyond words. And I particularly want this to be presented to children's activities. Last year, you know, I walked around some of the fabulous sort of marquees and tents, and children were doing a handwriting competition, for example. And you want to see the perfection. And as I keep saying, anything that gets children away from tablets, mobile phones, television, stuck in their rooms. So this year this will go to one of the activities that children are participating in here at Clonmany Show. And please, children, come along, because those of you who haven't been, you're missing out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had an absolute blast this morning. Things like this, especially around Donegal, are very, very special. I love being an advocate for Donegal, and I know you do as well. What are some of your favourite things about our gorgeous county?
You know what? We're blessed here mainly because of the people. I always say, and in the words of the famous song, your hearts are like your mountains in the homes of Donegal. How true. Because there's a lovely welcome where'er you go in this county. And as I say, nature has been more than generous. Mountains, lakes, sea, beaches, wide open spaces. That's what we're all about. We're people of the sea as well. We have the salt water in our blood. It's just an amazing county. I'm a wee bit biased, I know.
Well, listen, yeah. I totally agree with you, and you've an absolutely phenomenal way with words. Now, you celebrated, I can't believe I'm saying this, your 70th birthday recently. You don't look like a day older than 45, Noel, so, I mean, that must have been such a milestone for you.
Thank you, Eric, for bringing this up. In Ireland, you know, it's so funny. There are three ages. There's young, middle-aged, and you're looking very well, Noel. I only realised that when I turned 70. You know what? 70 has made me more intent than ever to take that mantra on board. Get up, get out, keep engaged, keep doing things. I swim, I cycle, I hike, I do all of those things, and I will continue to do those things. And as I say to my nephews and their children, as long as I'm not wearing socks, I'm still cool.
Right, okay.
Absolutely. That's the key to it.
I'm never putting on a pair of socks again.
Do not wear socks.
Well, listen, this might take a few years off my life now. We're about to attempt a bit of sheep shearing, Noel. So come
God, I'm not doing it.
Well, I'm going to try my hand at it. Come over here. Kevin, how are you getting on? You're going to show me how to do a bit of this now today. I'm going to give the sheep a short back and sides, a low taper fade. Hop you up there now, and we're going to try our hand at it. I'm going to watch you first, Kevin, because number one, I'm a little bit nervous, and number two, I don't know what I'm doing. So we're going to get one of them out here now. Noel, have you ever sheared a sheep before?
Believe it or not, I have, but without clippers when I was away.
Right, okay, right, okay. Let's see how we got to get on here now. It looks easy enough, Kevin. You do this all the time, do you? Is a novice like me going to be all right, do you think? I think I'm more nervous than the sheep here, Noel, to be honest with you. It's looking well, though. It's looking well. It looks like it's enjoying itself. They're a lot more comfortable now once they get rid of the wool, Kevin. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. They cool down a lot then.
Like me now. I might take the clippers to myself after this. The hair's getting a bit long as well, Noel. What do you reckon? Right. That's taken you about 30 seconds there now, and it's nearly all done. Guys, I'll get to you shortly. You have to wait your turn. This one's name is Mern here. I don't think that's its natural hair colour either, so I don't want to comment. Right, I'm going to give it a go here now, Kevin. Right, so this is on now, so we'll turn it off first, right? Safety first, right? Okay. Right, so you just want to load short back and sides here. Here we go now, I'm a natural. Look at that. Oh, I might get a job yet, guys. Well, listen, we've got loads of sheep to get through here yet in Clonmany. We're going to have a busy morning. I'm going to be talking to Daniel Wiffen very soon. Noel, you're going to get up here next. I'm going to give you a haircut. Guys, in the meantime, back to you in the studio. Now, we're nearly finished.
Hey, look at Noel Cunningham dressed for the fields and an agricultural
Oh, yes.
in his best dapper clothes.
It's
look at him.
gorgeous. And that's me.
That's wearing the sheep.
Wearing the sheep.
That's how I look before I put my fake tan on in the morning.
Yeah, that's
exactly like that. Talk to you in a little while, Eric. Uncanny. Now, what do we got coming up?
After the break, we're going to be rustling up something whopping in the kitchen.
Really?
A real whopper.
Okay. We're making beef burgers.
We'll talk to you very shortly. Did you
Oh,
not
look at those
Did you
beef
not want to
burgers.
reveal it? Talk to you in a minute.
Thanks for staying with us now. The bank holiday weekend is here. So Edward Hayden is back with us and he's making a very complicated menu this morning.
Edward, what are you starting with?
I'm starting.
We're making burgers.
I'm starting with the rolling pin to give him a good whack of it.
Oh, you don't enjoy that too much, Edward.
After that, I will be making some lovely burgers. As I was saying, it's the bank holiday weekend coming. The weather is looking favourable, so people might be planning little
outdoor soirees,
which are always lovely to have. So this is a really nice burger recipe. Again,
Distinct
quite
from not a nice burger recipe.
of which there are several, but unknown to me, let it be said. So again, it's just really nice, a meaty option. I'm doing it with beef this morning, but people can do it with lamb if they so desire. So in here, I've just got some minced beef. First of all, I'm going to season it with some salt and pepper. Now again, chefs get a bit of a bad reputation when it comes to salt, but always more favourable, I think, to put it in at this stage rather than have to do it at the dining stage. So allow the flavours to build incrementally.
Can I ask you about the quality of the mince in this? Do you like it a bit fatty, or would you get the steak mince?
I do, to be honest, like a bit of fat in it. I'm going to talk to you about binding ingredients in just a second, but a bit of fat just gives it a little bit of flavour. I'm going to kind of put in 3 binding ingredients, first of all, one of which is some fresh white breadcrumbs. And what the fresh white breadcrumbs do is they soak up any of that residual fat. So as it emerges, as it comes out, they just kind of mop it up and then they retain it. And that retention of fat gives you the retention of flavour.
Okay, lovely.
So I'd say about kind of in around 10% fat is really nice for them.
Okay.
If you get one that's kind of very low in fat, I would perhaps omit the breadcrumbs, because if not, it'll just be very dry in its texture.
Okay.
The second binding ingredient I'm going to put in there is an egg. So just put in 1 large egg and just allow that to be mixed in. And then a cheese of your choice, okay? So I'm using a little bit of grated mozzarella here this morning, but you could maybe put in a bit of Parmesan, a bit of Gruyere. If you like that kind of more stronger flavours, you could put in something like a blue cheese or a gorgonzola if you're that way inclined.
How much mince have you got there?
Now, again, the recipe that I've given people online, it's £1.50. I just have slightly less here this morning. You get about 7 or 8 big beefy burgers out
of that.
And you think, no, not out of this much. I have slightly less. I have about £1 here this morning.
Okay.
But the
You're going to laugh at that?
Yeah. No, because I have the full batch in the oven, so this is just for the demonstration. Cheese going in there. So that's the 3 binding ingredients. Then we're going to add in 3 flavourings. So the first one I have is a little bit of parsley. I've told you a million times before about the little bit of damp tissue on top, just to keep it nice and fresh. So a little bit of chopped parsley going in there. I've also got some scallions or some spring onions. If you wanted to use normal red or white onions, I would probably saute them up first and foremost.
Oh, would you? Because I love a nice raw onion with it.
Yeah, I do too, to serve with it, and I have them there to serve with it. I have an onion marmalade and I have raw onion, but I think if I was putting them into the burger as a red or white, I'd saute it and let it go cold and then add it. But with the scallions, I'm happy enough just to put them in like that, and also the scallions gives that nice bit of colour as well. And then I've just got a little bit of homemade sweet chilli relish or sweet chilli sauce. But again, if you don't have that, open the door of your fridge, and in it you will find, I'm sure, a host of sauces and relishes. And really what it does is...
I wouldn't.
Yeah. Yours mightn't be the atypical fridge to be opening. We won't use you as
lots of things clinking, but they're not sauces.
They're not sauces,
Where are all the sliced lemons gone? Now, I'm just going to put on the smallest little pair of gloves imaginable, and I'm going to get in there and give these a little mix around. And that's the thing, I mean, you want to get in here with your hands and give them a full mix around. Now, I've got this mixture, which I'm going to make into burgers. You could maybe make it into meatballs if you wanted as well. So in there, I'm going to go, give them a nice little mix around. Okay, now this mixture, as I said, I'm making burgers. You might also decide to make lovely meatballs, or of course you could squash the recipe that I've given you down into a 2-pound loaf tin for the weekend, bake it at 170, 325 or gas mark 3 for a lovely meatloaf, yeah. Again, which would be nice if you were heading off on a little picnic. We'll be having picnics aplenty in Greg Manor for the weekend. So
I always think, is it just me that the meatloaf is a lot drier?
Now, again, it can be dry, but let me tell you, with the addition of the cheese, the egg and the relish in this recipe, it's not. It is quite... So even when it's cold, it's still kind of like a juicy little loaf. Now, so there you have it. I have my tray here prepared with a little bit of parchment, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mould those into nice, good, substantial sized burgers. I don't like them to be too thin. I was just talking to Ant earlier on about the kind of these whole smash burgers, but I like them to be a little bit
I was going to say,
thick.
how tightly are you packing them in your hand?
Fairly substantially, because I want them to be, you know, that meaty. So I want them to be crust on both sides, but a nice little bit of meat in the centre.
But how do you know? Because I tend to sometimes the burger will burn and it won't be fully done inside.
And that's really imperative. Just
and
I'm going to tell you about that in 1
second.
second. If you wanted, you could just mould it a little bit around your thumb, stuff a little bit of extra cheese into the centre, like a goat's cheese or a brie or something, and fold that back over, and that would work really nicely for you. Now, in terms of cooking them, so I'm going to cook these. I've cooked these this morning in the oven. You could cook them in the barbecue if you want and finish them off in the oven. If you're doing them on the barbecue, what I would say to you is use the lid as a kind of like that incubated cooking effect, which will help to cook them thoroughly. If you're cooking them in the oven, they need to be cooked through. And again, of course, it's worthy of note that the minced beef needs to be cooked to a core temperature of 75 degrees, because, of course, you have to be mindful that, you know, with the fact of it being processed and all of that, it needs to be cooked through for food safety. So don't take any compromises on that.
I would do the same as you. I cut it open.
Yeah, you have one of them with a little slice.
But again, if I can just show you, now I know these are perfectly cooked through, but if I can just show you, if you just use a little finger, if you just press your finger, there should be a firmness to them, which there is to that. Now, I'm just giving you a little bit of lettuce, and I'm going to give you a little bit of crispy bacon.
Oh, it's crispy bacon as well.
Crispy bacon. Well, please God, it will be crispy. Let me have a look. Yeah, crispy bacon.
Have you toasted? You've toasted the bread, have you?
I've toasted them. I've put them into the oven.
I love a toasted bun. I hate a cold bun with a burger.
I toasted them. Yeah, I was here one morning, Kieran, and I didn't put the buns into the oven for lamb burgers. I thought I was going to lose my good job. I thought I was going to lose my good job. Now, as I said, just to note, I haven't put any relish on them, and to walk you through what I've given you there, I've given you a lovely bit of homemade sweet chilli mayonnaise. I've given you a little tomato and red pepper salsa. I've a little bit of chili cheese. I've got a bit of sliced tomato, raw onion and onion marmalade.
And would you do this, Edward, then, if you were serving these, you just have that out and let people
he does
go
that
over
when
and
he's
have a dip?
on his own eating.
Yeah, absolutely. You set a standard. But, yeah, I mean, 100%, if I was doing this, I want easy, entertaining.
You've got to get your hands on a Whopper.
Yeah.
Do you? Get your hands around that Whopper.
He's abandoning...
What's this sauce again?
That's homemade sweet chilli mayonnaise. So it's sweet chilli jam with a bit of mayonnaise mixed together. But I would put now, even I would go to the fact of just putting the lettuce, I'd put a platter of the burgers, I'd put a platter of the warm buns and let people serve themselves. Yeah. What do you reckon, Kieran?
That is delicious.
Is that on the Cunningham menu this weekend?
It might be. It might well be. That's
Edward,
so good.
as always, a pleasure. Thank you so
You're
much.
very welcome.
Now, coming up, he's your mammy's biggest crush and your daddy's favourite singer. Yes, the one and only Daniel O'Donnell will be joining us live from Donegal at 9:20. And Ireland's only chess grandmaster will be sharing his tips and tricks on how to improve your game. You obviously like this. We'll see you in a few minutes. Now, there was certainly plenty of celebrations, the length of Ireland and all the way to Paris following Daniel Wiffen's gold medal win last night.
An emotional time following years of preparation, no doubt.
And someone who has been cheering him every step of the way, his twin brother Nathan, who is with us now. Nathan, good morning. How are you feeling?
Yeah, feel a bit rough now after the celebrations, but everybody is over the moon about it all.
You're allowed to feel rough because, of course, you're not doing a 1,500 metres in a few days, so you could celebrate last night. But we heard Daniel say that as he walked out, as he was writing his name into the history books, as he walked out to start swimming, he heard your voice, Nathan. He said, of course, typical. I heard my brother. What were you shouting at him?
Well, I don't think I can repeat the stuff I was saying, but it was, I don't even know what I was saying at the time. I was just, come on, Daniel, you've got this. Do the best there.
Oh, that's amazing. Because he has been saying that, like, you've been FaceTiming him like 4 or 5 times a day. What was his spirits going into yesterday? Was he very confident because he looked it?
Actually, when I FaceTimed earlier, we didn't even talk about the race. We were just talking like just normally, and then we weren't even thinking, oh yeah, we got an Olympic final in the evening here to watch. It was just so chilled out, and that's just how it is normally.
Amazing.
What, Nathan, when you were watching it, because when we were all watching it and everyone was watching it, and like we all got so nervous when the Italian, like he had an amazing swim and he kind of crept ahead. I was like, oh no, the gold medal is slipping away. And then afterwards, Daniel was like so chill about it. He's like, no, I just kind of looked to my left, looked to my right. It was all fine. I mean, what were your emotions looking down on it?
I knew he had it going into the last 100 because he was quite strategically well placed. Luckily, the Italian doesn't have the same backhand speed as Daniel, so then I knew that he had enough on the American on the last 50 to take him out, and I was like, I was already celebrating with a 50 to go.
It's amazing to hear how you speak, and you've come into studio with us before with Daniel and Nathan. You're just so in tune with each other, and you use the term "we" when we were doing this, and we were. Does it feel like you are so connected in that way that you're kind of a team in this? Obviously, you're not.
Yeah, well, I feel like I swam it last night. To be honest, I feel because I was standing for the whole race, cheering him on. I've nearly lost my voice, and yeah, I think we're just in tune. And I was trying to like telepathically tell him during the race, "You got to go now." So it was pretty funny.
I mean, it is like when we saw him last night and the confidence, and where does that come from him? And because he was literally like saying, I'm not going to Paris to compete, I'm going to Paris to win a gold.
Where does it come from? I don't really know, to be honest, because I think it's just a trait in our family, maybe, because I never really noticed him being that confident. I just think it's just normal. So, I don't know.
That's all us Wiffens. We're just like that. Yeah.
We'll all be going to you, a psychologist. When you're finished with the swimming career, we'll be like, help us all.
So how is he feeling with the 1,500 still to go?
I talked to him this morning, actually, and he was just we still didn't really mention that he was Olympic champion. We were just kind of still chatting, but I hope he can refocus in for the 1,500 because we've got some more people flying out, like a lot of my friends from home, to come watch. So hopefully he puts on a good show for that.
No pressure there.
Put on a good show for the friends. How did you celebrate last night?
Well, we just went out for dinner.
Oh, the family, you went out for dinner?
Yeah, and then some of our coaches flew over from because we train in Loughborough in England, and they flew over to come watch. So we had dinner with them as well.
A bit of a gang. It's a long way from being extras in Game of Thrones that you've both come from, Nathan, isn't it?
Yeah, that was a long time ago, and now to say you've gone from being an actor to Olympic champion is pretty weird to say.
It is pretty amazing.
Pretty amazing. So what are the preparations now before the next race? As you say, need to refocus now. But obviously that's something he knows he has to do then. That was yesterday, and now we have to just set our mind for the next race.
Yeah, well, you see a lot of these people who do multiple events, like you see like Michael Phelps, and they're always like, you forget about that race and then you move on to the next and you just got to refocus again. He's got 3 days, though, until the next race for the heats, so then I think he'll have enough time to be honest.
It's absolutely amazing. The atmosphere inside in that place that is actually a rugby pitch, of course, is unbelievable. It was great to see you last night. Hopefully we'll see you again with your mother directing the photo shoot like she did last night afterwards. Nathan Wiffen, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And of course, Mona McSharry, and there's a few swimmers coming up that we've got to look out for
Walsh,
as well.
Ellen Walsh swimming second time in the pool,
Yeah.
and then everyone else.
I
Matt playing
that's
badminton
just
as we
a family
speak.
trait.
Just
You know,
family
just,
trait.
yeah, we're going to win it. We're just doing it.
Become our psychologist, please. After the break, everyone's favourite country music star joins us live from Donegal.
Yes, the one and only Daniel O'Donnell is here.
So don't go anywhere.
Welcome back. Now, the wonderful Eric, he had to just stroll out of bed, stay in Donegal this morning. That's where he's been. He was like, I'll do that job. I'll stay in Donegal.
Yeah. Catching up with the even more wonderful Donegal country music legend, Daniel O'Donnell.
Now, before we head over and chat to Eric and Daniel, let's take a look at something that Daniel does best.
Stand beside me. You're the only one who ever made me care. All right. There'll be times when everything goes wrong, but darling, I won't care if I know you're standing there, no matter what we have to do.
Well, wasn't that absolutely lovely? Guys, we're here in Ballyliffin ahead of the Clonmany Agricultural Show, and I'm standing beside the man himself, Mr. Daniel O'Donnell. Daniel, first of all, thanks very much for speaking to us today.
Thanks,
the whole town's come out to see us. How are you guys? Are you enjoying yourselves this morning?
They're not lying in here in Clonmany and Ballyliffin this morning. Even the cows are out.
Even the cows are out. They're singing tunes behind us here. Now, Daniel, this isn't your first time at the. You were here last year as well.
I was here last year at just an amazing event. I mean, it's hard to describe what goes on here when the show is in progress. The atmosphere, the amount of work, the preparation that the local people put into this is just, it's a credit to them. And I mean, it's been running, this is the 55th year. And last year, Noel contacted me. I was aware of the show, of course, but never managed to get to it. And Noel contacted me to see would I come and open the show. And I was just amazed. It's and like anybody that's within striking distance or going to be in Donegal next week, you should make your way here for this great event.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously you really enjoyed yourself last year because you've come back again
and
this year.
And there's loads. I mean, there's cooking going on. There's people doing demonstrations. There's so it's so diverse. I mean, of course, agricultural dictates that there's a lot of this, you know, animals and all that, you know, it's concentrated. But there's so much going on. You won't believe. You know, there's something for everybody.
Yeah. So you're excited again to take part this year.
There's fashion shows. Listen. You would live here and you would think, what was I at?
Well, Noel Cunningham was looking very fashionable earlier on.
Don't be talking about Noel Cunningham. I feel underdressed now because I have socks on.
Not at all.
Or overdressed, maybe.
Not overdressed.
Noel's saying you don't wear socks.
Well, he was complimenting the two of us, saying we're both wearing the baby blue. He was saying this is in style now, so me and Daniel are absolutely delighted.
Blue is right.
He was dressed for a wedding. You were at a wedding yourself there recently. Your son-in-law got married.
That's right.
A big Greek wedding. How was that?
That's right, yeah. We had a great time. Michael, our son, lives in Melbourne with his wife now, and they'd wanted to get married in Europe. Her people are all Greek, and they decided on Italy. So we had a great time. It was a bit Greek. They broke the plates.
You were smashing plates.
Smashed the plates, and our wee grandson Archie was standing. I had his hand caught, and they started breaking the plates. And he says, "What are they doing, Gaga?" Oh, I says, actually, this is something they do. I says, the Greek people. He says, that's a terrible waste of money, Gaga.
Oh, no. Well, I tell you, I've been at a few weddings and I've seen some people break some plates at Irish weddings as well.
Well, that's a different story.
For a different reason.
But we had a great time, and it's great to have nice celebrations.
Yeah. Well, it's nice to get abroad for a wee wedding as well when the sun's
Absolutely.
not too... You were busy as well last week. You were hosting the Mary of Dunloe.
Yeah, the Mary of Dunloe's on at the minute, and it started last Saturday, and on Sunday we had a big concert in Dunloe. And when I leave here today, I'm going in. Highland Radio's doing an outside broadcast,
And then on Sunday night, there's things on all the time. There's a concert on tonight with Ronan Collins and Dominic Kerwin and Susan McCann are there in the town. Jimmy Buckley's playing later. And then over the weekend there'll be a lot of things going on. Sunday night is the crowning cabaret where they'll pick the Mary from Donegal, and that goes out live on the TG Cahir Player. So from 8 o'clock I do the interviewing.
Amazing.
And so it's a great event. I mean, that's all of these things, like the agricultural show here, they're so important to the local areas.
Yeah.
I mean, we're rural. If you look around you here, we're right in the middle of the heart of rural Donegal. So all of these things are so important to the local areas. From a financial point too,
Absolutely.
there's no point in saying it's all for the enjoyment.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a huge, draw for people to come to the area. And I suppose for me, it's great to be a part of it all. I live near Dunlow, from Kincastle. So anything that you can do for your local areas is not wasted.
Well, someone as successful and has had as much success as you've had, doing things like the Kilmany Festival and Mary from Donegal, it must be very special to do these things in Donegal, where you're from.
I mean, it's always, when you grow up somewhere, no matter where you go, how far you go, you never really leave home.
Yeah.
And I've been blessed that I'm able to live at home. I did go away for a while when I started out first. We were travelling a lot around Ireland, doing dances and that. It was too far to live up here and drive away to Cork or Kerry or wherever you were going. But when I started then doing concerts and doing tours, I could come back here when I was off. So I chose to set up home, back at home again.
Well, sure,
so I'm very blessed to be able to do that.
Where would you be going?
I know.
Speaking on tours, you have another tour coming up as well.
Yeah, we're starting next week then, and we start in Leisureland in Galway on the 9th, and we're in Limerick then on the 10th. We're Castlebar on the 15th. We're at Bourgash on the 12th. Wexford and the Opera House on the 14th, and then we're in Cork at the end of the month.
And not only that as well, you have a greatest hits album coming out.
We have.
You never stop, Daniel?
Well, they're looking back at 40 years of recording.
It must be the longest album of all time.
I think there might be 40 songs on it, I don't know. They're looking at 40 years, and I sometimes can't believe that I'm 40 years singing. It's over 40 years.
That's incredible.
Since I started with Margaret in 1981, so that's 40. It'll be 44 years now next January.
And I'd say there's plenty of hits left in the locker yet.
Well, you never know. We'll keep chiming away as long as we can.
Well, you're 40 years in the industry. What do you attribute the success to that? Is it just consistency? Is it the obsession you have with it?
Well, I always enjoyed it. I still enjoy singing. No matter where it is. I was singing, as I said, Sunday, and then last Monday night I was over Fergal Flaherty, as in from Tenerife, doing shows in the Bridge Inn, and then there Monday night. And I just love the singing, wherever it might be. If it's in the Albert Hall or the Opera House in Sydney, or in a pub somewhere in Dunlow, it doesn't matter.
Well, we might get a few tunes out of him yet today, guys. What do you think?
It's kind of early in the morning.
It's early in the morning, but listen.
We'll let the cows sing away.
We'll let the cows sing away.
Will we sing? I've just stepped in to see you all. I'll only stay a while. Come up and you'll get more next week.
Guys, you heard it from the man himself. We're live here from Ballyliffin, the Kilmany Festival, taking place next week, the agricultural show. Guys, we're going to keep busy here this morning, aren't we? Yeah. We're going to get a few more songs in. Guys, back to you in the studio. Jesus, not
I love Daniel. Come up and pay for tickets.
I'm not joking. It was musical clickbait.
Yeah,
I'll tease you, but we'll have you more.
Tickets on sale now.
Well done. Love Daniel.
Now, still to come on the show, I don't know how it's happened, but I've been convinced to play chess against Ireland's only Grandmaster.
Because in the meeting yesterday, we said, can anyone play chess?
Yeah,
and you I can.
I said I know the rules. I remembered them from primary school. I didn't say, I can, let me play a chess Grandmaster.
Yeah, you kind of did.
Checkmate.
Never put your hand up in our meetings. And we're styling our very own Brat Girl Summer on the catwalk.
Yeah, stay with us. We're back here in a few minutes.
Now, chess is a game that requires exceptional strategy and skill. So who better to talk about it I'm Murren and myself, naturals.
I mean, obviously. As someone who knows his king from his bishop is Ireland's only Grandmaster of chess, Alex Babarin. Good morning. How are you, Alex? It's lovely to have you here. Now, you are going to play chess against Alex.
I'm still not 100% how this happened. I don't quite know.
Put his hand up in a meeting.
I
That's
just
what
said I
happened.
knew the rules.
So, can you remind us of the basic
Sure,
rules?
the basics.
Tell us.
White starts the game. We are using the clocks. I'm going to press the button. You make your move. You can take as much time as you like. Once you make a move,
and then I make my
press
move and hit that.
Exactly.
Okay, bang, bang.
All right.
Bang.
Okay, I'm going to ask questions as they play chess. You are a grandmaster of chess, Alex. How did you become a grandmaster?
It's a long enough process. It took me years and years, but it basically involves performing well in tournaments of certain standards and getting your rating up. So I think it took me about 5 years of serious tournament play to obtain the title.
5 years?
Yeah.
And what was... I'm sorry, I'm really enjoying you going, what are you having a conniption? So far, something's been taken.
Yes.
Oh, there we go.
Swap.
Can you see what he's doing now? Do you know how this is going to end?
I love the last move because it was, giving me a winning game. So.
Is that it? Have you won?
Oh, come on.
I think it's just the nose.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Is it
All
done?
right, okay, you keep going.
You keep going. Okay.
I've learned something there.
So you do this with tournaments. You're originally from Russia, and chess would be a big game in Russia. Why was that?
Huge. I think there was basically a huge push in the 1920s and 30s to educate people who were moving from the countryside into the cities. So lots of clubs of all kinds popped up, and chess was kind of a cheap and cheerful way to get people engaged.
Okay.
So, and a lot of people learned the game. Many of them became good, and people play chess in families. Like when I grew up, my dad played chess. He taught me. My two uncles, that is the most generous offer. My two uncles play chess, so I had kind of the environment around me.
So you moved here in 1993. Why Ireland?
Purely by chance.
Okay.
I played in a tournament in the north of France, and I stayed in a hotel with a couple of Irish players. And over breakfast, I thought it was my opportunity to practice my English for free. So we started chatting with a man called Eamon Keogh. And over breakfast, he said he had this idea of inviting someone from former Soviet Union. No, you can't do that. You're in Czech. So
it's not Czech.
You can kiss goodbye to the big lady. So that was purely by chance. And he invited me to a tournament here.
Yeah.
And just to get an idea. And I came, and half a year later, I moved in with my wife and then a 3-year-old son. So that was the beginning of it.
In 1993.
See how long it took him to make that move? He's spooked.
So spooked.
He is spooked.
It's unbelievable.
I've got him.
He's not even paying attention. So you moved to Ireland. Was there anyone here really playing chess?
There was a chess scene. I mean, I didn't really know what to expect, and that is a checkmate.
So that's two. Let's go again.
Yeah, so there was a chess scene. There were competitions, there were clubs, there were people playing, and one of the ideas, I guess, was to kind of make it better, make it stronger.
Yeah.
So over the years, I've been working with lots of young players, and many of them are now my main competitors. So that's how it works.
Okay, so you've had to train your own
competitors.
Yes,
I was basically cutting the branch I was sitting on. So I was just...
That's such a good way of pushing it. So obviously everyone talks about the Queen's Gambit. It did have an effect on people getting into chess.
Big effect, yes. Lots of people mentioned the show, and I watched it myself. I found it very interesting. No, can't do that.
Why?
That's illegal. The king will be exposed to a check, so you have to take it back. Yeah, so it was very popular, and I think it did a lot of good to chess, to the game. So more people learned about it.
But it is like, a doctor watching ER. You saw issues with it as well, going, oh, can't do that.
Yeah, people talking during games was one big thing. So that doesn't happen in real chess. And I mean, you can say certain things to your opponent, like I offer a draw, which I, by the way, I'm not doing.
Did he decide to draw? Oh, this one's
And also,
Sorry, did he make a move there? When I was...
Also, the fact that she got so good on her own, practically in isolation, that I find very difficult to believe.
You have to be.
Yeah, you have to kind of communicate, you have to compete, you have to mix with your peers. And I'd say drug taking is completely off, because that wouldn't, that would not last very long in professional chess.
You need to concentrate.
Yeah.
He's not taking drugs and he doesn't know what's going on. So with this, I know that it's you've seen a rise then in Ireland. Like, you do chess lessons with people, you go out, you kind of train people up.
Correct. My main focus are children, chess in schools. But I noticed that I had a lot more students inquiring, adult students inquiring about the game. And I did a couple of courses for adult beginners. I think I just got a new student right now for those courses who wanted to play chess. And that went very well. So
that's what you're kind of doing.
Yeah,
you're doing
that's what I do.
Because there's also, obviously, people are always talking about...
Check again.
Oh, I'm in check again.
You're in check again, but I don't know what's happening. So with this, I know. So games like this and bridge, board games, mind games, they're meant to be good for, cognitive acuity. They're starting to do studies into mental decline as we get older in relation to that. Is that something like you're keeping the brain active?
Yeah, I came across those claims, and I find them quite plausible. So I would imagine that would be useful.
Yeah.
So, I don't think there is enough hard data, but I think chess players, most, professional players usually stay very active mentally. Oh, no, you're in check again, so that's kind of
how did that happen?
Because I moved it down.
Sorry, Anthony behind the camera just laughing so much at this. We should have had Anthony up here. So there's about 30 chess clubs, I think, in and around Dublin, but there's chess clubs all around the country. How can people get in contact with you? Because you do lessons.
We have an organization which is not that big, but it's very active. Again, you're in Czech, you can't go there.
Oh, sorry.
The Irish Chess Union. I think it has just over 1,000 members, but it's quite an active organization.
Oh, wow.
And so people can go to the website of the Irish Chess Union, icu.ie.
Sorry, what's that? Anyway, I think we're just out of time there now. Is that it?
It's also alexbabarinchess.com is where you can find out about Alex and the Irish Chess Union, which you're actively involved in. That was very enjoyable, I have to say. I enjoyed it a lot.
I was, and I'm actually sweating.
Do you know when someone is so good at everything and then you see something like this? You're better than all of us playing chess, and don't mind that. I thought he did a great job against a grandmaster.
Thank you.
Alex, thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure. Coming up next, we're going to have some Brat Girl Kieran on the catwalk to chill him out. God. We'll talk to you in a minute. We're just going to let him calm down. Brat. Welcome back to Ireland AM, and if there's a fad, we're going to hop on it. So we're going to pretend that we know all about Brat Girl Summer, yeah?
So explain this to me again now. So what is it?
I try to XES. It's a lovely colour.
Is it?
Look, watch this.
Drop down, yeah. Looking like an icon. Work angles, yeah. 360. When you're in the mirror, do you like what you see? When you're in the mirror, you're just looking at me. I'm everywhere, I'm so Julia. When you're in the party, bumping that beat. 666 with a princess streak. I'm everywhere, I'm so Julia. Yeah, 360. When you're in the mirror, do you like what you see? When you're in the mirror, you're just looking at me. I'm everywhere, I'm so Julia.
Charlie XCS, the woman of the moment.
Oh, yeah. I don't get that song at all. That's Brat. Joining us now to talk us through the styles this morning is Lorna Wayman. Good morning.
Good morning, Lorna. We're just going to get into some colours.
Forget about the song.
Yeah, that's it. Because honestly, that colour green is the basis for everything, right? But
green may not be to your liking, so I've got some other brights that we can talk about and how we can style it and give it a bit of a sophisticated edge as well.
Kelly's up first.
So Kelly's out first with the colour.
With the colour.
With the colour. But what's different about this dress is that it actually has flecks of yellow in it, so it breaks up that lime green, because that green is such a statement colour, and I actually think it's a very kind of hard colour to wear, and it may not be something that you would gravitate towards. So how we make that work is by just breaking it up with another colour in the same kind of colour family, and that's what the yellow
Was
does.
this like a trend from designers, or did this just come from her?
This has really come from her, except we did have that highlighter trend, you know, a couple of seasons ago. So everything is systemic, really, when it comes to fashion.
It
you know,
is, but it is her.
It is
It's
very
100%
much her.
her.
It's very much
Yeah.
her. But also, it is the TikTok generation as well. So we want to make it a little bit, you know, universal and get everybody involved as well.
Lovely dress. The bag.
The bag is, we're playing on that like almost Y2K trend as well with silver, and that's a big part of the accessories trend with this. So this is from Pennies. It's really affordable.
And the shoes.
The shoes are also metallic. So the colours all work together because it is a very statement look. These are just little short heel shoes, slip on. You can really try the trend, but the metallic and the lime green works really, really well together.
That is, that's great.
And the dress is from dresses.ie as well, and it's
great.
a lovely mesh stretchy fabric.
Alicia is here with our second look.
So if lime green isn't for you,
Yes.
you
See
might
Myrne
want to
wearing
go
this now.
for orange.
Go.
Now, orange still kind of, in a lot of the editorial pieces that have been written about this trend, orange actually features very heavily in it. And when you want to wear a black colour like this, you want to look for details. So this dress from Vavavoom has lots of them. So you'll notice shoulders out, halter neck, seam around the middle, but you also have this lovely kind of tiered ruffle that gives this beautiful kind of flamenco vibe to the dress.
It really
so
does.
it's really gorgeous. So if you've got an occasion coming up this summer, like a wedding, this is a lovely piece
And
for
it's
it.
nice. It's good price as well
It's a
for
good
what
price
it is.
too.
It looks very expensive.
And it's lined as well,
Look
which
at
I
this,
love
look at the
about
bag.
a
Look
dress.
at the bag,
Isn't
it's
the bag
lovely.
just cute? It is so good. So I'm really going in on this kind of Charlie CX's trend of more is more. So we've got the little heart bag as well, which is so
And
gorgeous.
matching the shoes.
And matching the shoes. So you'll notice there's a lot of coordination between the shoes and the bags and the accessories
Those
as
shoes
well.
are great.
Aren't they gorgeous? And the heel height is just super. And that's all from vavavoom.ie.
Gorgeous, Alicia. Thank you so much. Beautiful dress with that one. Great for the races.
Now, if you want to get sophisticated with this trend,
What's
this
Sarah
is what
got?
Sarah's
Oh,
got,
yeah, look at this.
which is lovely. So we've got still that bright colour, but we're just going slightly darker. So
Yeah.
if you want to try the trend, but you don't want to leap too much into it, then the separates and tailoring is a great way to
But
go.
those trousers really are striking, though.
Aren't they?
Yeah,
It's
but the
colour.
blouse is lovely.
The
It's a
blouse
lovely
is lovely.
tailored blouse,
And
isn't
it's
it?
actually shimmery, so it's
Yeah.
not plain white. There's a lovely kind of shimmer to it. So up close, you'd actually see that it has a lovely glisten to it. So it's a dressier version of that tailored look that we kind of tend to really feel comfortable in.
Go from work out to play in this.
Exactly, and that's what's lovely about this trend actually. And you'll see in a lot of the TikToks, there is a lot of separates with this. These trousers are full straight leg. They're a little bit wider cut as well. They have a double button around the waist, which I love because it actually acts as a belt and really breaks up that look too.
And the bag, we've stayed with that sort of that's gorgeous bag.
Isn't this gorgeous? So it actually has this kind of mirrored effect in it, but it's all kind of concave and converse, so it reflects the light really well, and it just works so well with the shimmer. But cold tones in your accessories, like the silver bag, work great with this
With
trend.
those colours, absolutely.
Yeah, really well with these colours.
Another pair of slip-on shoes.
Yes, I'm mad for the slip-ons at the
They're
moment,
beautiful.
aren't they? Because the heel height at the moment is really, really sensible.
Yeah.
And I love the white and black with this. You've just got a little bit of detail. But these are probably shoes that are so versatile for every look you have.
Comfortable.
They're comfortable because I try on everything before I put it on, and I've walked around with them, and they're great because your foot goes right deep into them, so you don't slip out.
Yeah.
And
You're not
that's a
going for
real
a
key.
run in them.
You're
No,
not.
but
Do you know
I'm
what I
just
mean?
saying, just even walking around
No,
is it
not at
comfortable.
all.
It is.
Kelly.
Kelly's back now.
We've seen a lot of watercolour tie-dye prints with this trend as well. So this is, I love this kind of, you know, like flowing water effect through a dress. And this look is from Carrick Dunn. And Kelly's going to slip off the jacket.
But there's just a nice, is that just a denim
It's just a little denim jacket.
White denim.
White denim jacket because it picks out the white in the print. So if you need a
Lovely.
little bit of cover up, because especially
Okay.
because this is sleeveless as well, you might want to cover up with this, and that's what the denim jacket does. But you can see the way the fabric crisscrosses the whole way down her body, which I love because you can manipulate the fabric wherever you want it to sit.
Oh,
which
that's
is
nice.
very, very clever. But it, again, we're really going back to the noughties for a lot of the inspiration
100%.
with this. We really are. And this is from Carrick Dunn. And again, it's lined, but that overlay of the dress is mesh and stretchy.
And then with the
Super
bag.
fabric. So with the bag, we needed to add in this like pretty effect as well. So not everything has to be a very TikTok or social media inspired trend.
Exactly.
So to make it look a little bit, this is a very designer inspired bag as well, by the way. It's kind of got a little bit of hints of self-portrait in there, which I love.
Nothing wrong with that.
No, and for €30, it's a great one.
And the little shoes?
So little shoes, these are actually denim shoes.
Yeah.
Are
So
they?
yeah, the little bit of denim. These are from Pennies. They've got a strap on the back, so if the slip-on wasn't for you, these ones will stay on really well.
Really back in Bewitched
We
time.
are so back in Bewitched
Cute
time.
though, aren't they?
They
But
are.
the blues all blend really nicely together. So
And you did some jewellery?
jewellery we've just kept very, very simple. You've got silver again, so you'll notice how big this trend is with the accessories. But we've got a little pearl on these too, so it's just making the trend a little pretty.
And with the
which
little
we love.
bracelet as
And
well
the
to
little
match
bracelet.
it.
So there's a lot of coordination
Cool tones.
with accessories, so loads of cool tones.
Look
for
at her
today's
butter
look.
wouldn't melt in
I
her
know.
face there,
She's
isn't
not
she?
a brat.
She
She's
is
not
not
a
a
brat.
No
brat.
brats here today.
Not a
Never.
Lorna. Thank you
Lorna
so
Wayne.
much for that.
Thank you
That's
so,
My
so much
pleasure.
for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Now, coming up on tomorrow's Ireland AM, consumer tips that may help you with some back to school. Oh,
There you
we
are. We were talking
Some
about back to school a while ago. Ooh, he's a little brat, isn't he? A little brat. Dublin's own pop diva Amy on her new summer sing-along single, and Amy is just such a sounder.
Yeah,
she's
she's
fantastic.
lovely,
Yeah, plus more Olympic updates, bank holiday weekend wines.
We're leaving it to the bank
Movies
holiday.
to stream.
Yes, we're live from 7 here on Virgin Media 1 and Virgin Media Player. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow.
Talking about being
Bye-bye.
sober earlier on wines tomorrow. Bye.
There you
Good
go.
one.